Emperor Xorlax the Magnificent was having the worst indigestion of his 17,000-year reign, and the entire galaxy was about to pay for it. "This," he announced, holding up a quivering cube of what was allegedly food, "is the reason empires fall." To be fair, ruling 17 quadrants and 42 sentient species created certain logistical challenges. Maintaining armadas of planet-destroying warships, simple enough. Managing an economy spanning thousands of worlds practically runs itself with the right AI. But serving a decent meal to a being with 16 specialized digestive organs and taste receptors that could detect flavor molecules at concentrations of 1 part per trillion, that was apparently where the mighty Galactic Empire drew the line between possible and preposterous. The Emperor's 16 eyes narrowed simultaneously, an impressive feat that had made lesser beings soil themselves across multiple dimensions. "I am the sovereign of the 7 spiral arms, conqueror of the void realms, and collector of—" He caught himself before revealing his embarrassing hobby involving miniature representations of extinct species. "Many impressive things. Is it too much to ask that my food tastes like something other than processed cardboard?" Grand Chef Zilgorax, who had prepared meals for the imperial family for over 3 centuries, trembled so violently that his tertiary appendages began to detach, a defensive mechanism that, while evolutionarily advantageous in the wild, was less helpful in a professional kitchen setting. "But, Your Magnificence," the chef warbled through his speaking orifice, "these meals have been calibrated for perfect nutritional balance and optimal digestive efficiency for Your Magnificence's unique physiology." The Emperor's chief advisor, a being made primarily of crystalline thought structures and barely contained anxiety, floated forward. "Perhaps, Your Magnificence, the issue is one of perspective. The concept of flavor is, after all, largely subjective and varies greatly across species." "Is the concept of not being fired into the nearest sun also subjective?" the Emperor inquired with deceptive pleasantness. The advisor's crystal structure dimmed noticeably. "Point taken, Your Magnificence." The truth, which no one at court dared articulate, was that the problem extended far beyond the Emperor's personal dissatisfaction. Galactic diplomacy, that delicate dance of threat, promises, and obscure cultural references, was conducted primarily over meals. It was tradition. It was expected. And currently, it was a disaster. 3 solar cycles ago, the Arcturan delegation had departed without signing the crucial plutonium rights agreement after being served what the Imperial kitchen claimed was a deconstructed feast, but what the Arcturans described in their official complaint as disconnected molecules arranged in a pattern of pure sadness. Before that, the ambassadors from the Crab Nebula had developed a collective psychic hive trauma after experiencing the Emperor's idea of a fusion dessert. The resulting psychic backlash had caused everyone within 3 parsecs to dream exclusively about spoons for a full rotation. The Great Galactic Recipe Book, once a proud collection of culinary traditions from across the Empire, had been reduced to variations of nutrient solutions, protein configurations, and the occasional attempt at what the kitchen referred to as texture enhancement, but what everyone else called slightly crunchier mush. Something had to be done, preferably before the Emperor's digestive dissatisfaction escalated from merely firing people to firing at planets. There must be someone somewhere in our vast domains who remembers what food is supposed to taste like, the Emperor mused, absently stroking one of his ceremonial whiskers, which was not actually attached to his face but rather hovered nearby as a symbol of his authority. The Minister of Interspecies Cultural Affairs, who had been silent until now, cleared all 3 of her throats. "Your Magnificence, if I may. There is a species we've recently made contact with. They're primitive, barely achieved interplanetary travel, still use physical currency, and inexplicably spend large portions of their time watching other members of their species pretend to be different members of their species. But they appear to have developed an unusual fixation on their nutrition intake. "You mean they care about what their food tastes like?" the Emperor asked, suddenly interested. "More than that, Your Magnificence. They have dedicated entire information networks to displaying images of their food. They engage in heated philosophical debates about preparation methods. They have specialized entertainment programs featuring competitions centered entirely around creating increasingly complex food items. Some members of the species devote their entire existence to the mastery of combining nutritional elements in ways that produce what they call flavor." The Emperor's central eye widened. "And what do they call themselves, these flavor-obsessed creatures?" "They are called humans, Your Magnificence. They reside on a small blue planet in an unremarkable spiral arm. A rather dramatic species. They simultaneously believe they are the most and least important beings in existence." "Humans," the Emperor repeated, rolling the unfamiliar word around in his speech apparatus. "And you say they care about how their sustenance tastes?" "To an extent that our xenopsychologists classify as possibly pathological, yes." For the first time in many rotations, Emperor Xorlax smiled, a gesture that involved the complex rearrangement of facial structures and caused several nearby guards to faint from sheer terror. "I want one." The minister blinked all 7 of her eyes in sequence. "You want a human?" "Yes, one of these humans. One that specializes in making food that doesn't taste like it was designed by engineers who hate joy. Your Magnificence, acquiring a specimen from a pre-settled contact species would violate at least 17 intergalactic protocols and—" "Did I ask for protocols, Minister? I asked for a human who can cook." The Imperial Court fell silent, save for the soft pinging sound of Grand Chef Zilgorax's detached tertiary appendages hitting the floor, one by one. The minister sighed, a sound like wind passing through crystal chimes. "As you wish, Your Magnificence. I shall dispatch a retrieval team immediately. However, I feel compelled to note that humans are known for being difficult. More difficult than eating another meal that tastes like the color grey? I think not." And thus began the imperial quest for a human chef, a decision that would alter the course of galactic politics, redefine interspecies relations, and finally, put an end to the Emperor's cosmic indigestion. Little did the imperial court know that their culinary salvation would come in a form they never expected, and with consequences that no one, not even the Empire's most sophisticated predictive algorithms, could have calculated. After all, humans didn't just cook with ingredients. They cooked with something the Empire had forgotten existed: imagination. And possibly too much butter. The wheels of fate began to turn, lubricated by the prospect of actual flavor, while somewhere in the universe, a human chef was about to have a very strange day at work. On Earth, in a kitchen that smelled of garlic, caramelized onions, and the faintest hint of desperation, the soon-to-be abducted chef was having a spectacularly bad day. The restaurant critic from the city's most prestigious food blog had just left, and judging by the vinegar-faced expression on the woman's surgically enhanced features, tomorrow's review would be about as pleasant as a root canal performed by a vengeful ex. The chef, a 35-year-old culinary school dropout with more talent than patience and more debt than either, was scrubbing a burnt saucepan with the kind of vigor usually reserved for exorcisms when the air in the kitchen began to shimmer. "If that's you messing with the ventilation system again, I swear I'll—" The chef's threat was cut short, as reality itself seemed to hiccup, and suddenly the kitchen contained several more beings than local physics should have allowed. The retrieval team from the Galactic Empire had arrived, and they were not what anyone would call inconspicuous. 3 tall, gangly creatures with skin that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light stood awkwardly between the prep station and the industrial refrigerator. Their limbs bent in geometrically improbable ways, and where one might expect faces, they had what looked like highly polished silverware drawer organizers. "Greetings, human food manipulator," said the tallest one, in perfect English, though the voice seemed to be coming from somewhere in the vicinity of what might have been its elbow. "We come in astronomical distances." "Peace," added another, making a gesture that on its homeworld signified diplomatic intent, but on Earth looked remarkably like someone trying to scratch their back with their own foot. The chef stared, saucepan forgotten, dripping suds onto the floor. "Did the health inspector send you? Because I can explain about the freezer situation. We represent His Magnificence, Emperor Xorlax the 17th of his name, supreme ruler of the Galactic Empire, who spans 17 quadrants and controls the destiny of 42 sentient species," the first alien explained, with the weary tone of someone who had to recite this introduction far too often. "Right," the chef nodded slowly. "And I'm Gordon Ramsay's long-lost twin. Our scans indicate you are not genetically related to the loud human who throws cooking implements," the second alien said, genuinely confused. "Your DNA structures are entirely distinct." The chef blinked. Twice. "You know Gordon Ramsay? We have monitored your planet's information networks. Your species broadcasts your cooking rituals galaxy-wide. It is most informative." "Huh. You came from space to watch Food Network?" "We came from space," the third alien finally spoke, its voice like gravel in a blender, "because our emperor requires someone who understands the concept of delicious." And then they explained about the emperor's culinary crisis, about the diplomatic incidents, about the desperate need for someone who could make food that actually tasted like food. "So, let me get this straight," the chef said, after they'd finished their explanation and demonstrated the reality of their claims by temporarily converting the microwave into a small quantum singularity, which, they assured the horrified chef, would revert to normal once the conversation was concluded. "You want me to leave Earth, travel to some distant part of space, and cook for an emperor with 16 eyes and a temper problem?" "That is an accurate summation, yes." "What's in it for me?" The aliens exchanged what might have been glances, if they had anything resembling eyes. "The honor of serving the emperor, naturally." The chef's laugh could have curdled milk. "Yeah, hard pass. I've worked for enough narcissistic restaurant owners to last a lifetime. I'm not adding space tyrant to my resume." The tallest alien made a sound like a modem trying to connect through a garbage disposal. "The Emperor suspected you might be reluctant. He has authorized us to offer compensation. Unless you're offering to pay off my student loans and the second mortgage I took to open this place, I'm not interested." The aliens conferred briefly in a language that sounded like quantum physics equations being read backward. "The Emperor can provide the equivalent of what you call money, in quantities sufficient to eliminate your financial obligations and establish you as what your species terms disgustingly wealthy upon your return." The chef paused, considered the burnt saucepan, the failing restaurant. The critic who was, at this very moment, probably crafting new and inventive ways to describe overcooked pasta. "How long would I have to stay?" "My collecting year, under standard galactic year, approximately 1.3 of your Earth years. And I'd come back rich, wealthy enough to purchase a small nation on your planet, should you desire one." The chef looked around the kitchen, at the dreams that were slowly dying between greasy stovetops and unpaid invoices, at the creativity that had been beaten down by the practicalities of running a business in an industry with a 90% failure rate. What the hell? It's not like things can get much worse here. The chef tossed aside the saucepan. When do we leave? Now would be optimal. Don't I need to pack or something? The Emperor will provide all necessities. Bringing Earth bacteria to the Imperial Palace would cause complications. So I just go with you? Right now? That is correct. The chef took one last look around the kitchen, shrugged and said, "Let me at least leave a note for my staff." 7 minutes later, after leaving a hastily scribbled explanation that would be assumed to be either a practical joke or a mental breakdown, the chef stepped into what the aliens called a dimensional displacement field and left Earth behind. The journey to the Imperial Palace took either 3 weeks or 17 seconds, depending on whether one measured by conventional time or the chef's subjective experience. Either way, it was disorienting. The palace itself defied description, though the chef's brain made a valiant attempt anyway. It was as if someone had taken every science fiction movie ever made, blended them together, and then asked a sentient chandelier to construct the result while high on paint fumes. Impossible geometries stretched into distances that shouldn't exist. Gravity changed direction seemingly at random. Colors appeared that the human visual spectrum had never contemplated. "This way to your quarters," said the tallest alien, leading the way down a corridor that occasionally rippled like the surface of a pond. "Is anything here normal?" the chef asked, trying not to look too long at what appeared to be a decorative water feature that flowed upward and occasionally burst into spontaneous poetry. "Define normal," the alien replied, with what might have been amusement. Chef's quarters turned out to be surprisingly comfortable, once you got past the fact that the bed adjusted itself to your body position even before you moved, and the bathroom facilities required a brief instructional seminar. "You will meet the Emperor at the evening meal cycle," the alien informed the chef. "The Imperial kitchen has been modified according to our research on human cooking methods." "Great. Any chance I could see it before I'm expected to cook in it?" "Of course. Follow." The Imperial kitchen, as it turned out, was both impressive and terrifying. It was the size of a football field, filled with equipment that ranged from the recognizable A device to the troubling A device that pulsated and occasionally whispered encouragement. "What's that?" the chef asked, pointing to a levitating metal sphere. "Quantum flavor analyzer. It deconstructs food at the subatomic level to evaluate taste potential." "And that?" This time indicating what appeared to be a small thunderstorm contained in a glass jar. "Molecular reorganizer, for when ingredients need persuading." The chef took a deep breath. "Do you have, I don't know, normal pots and pans, knives, a cutting board?" The aliens looked at each other. "We have replicated these primitive tools as well," one said, sounding slightly embarrassed as it gestured toward a section of the kitchen that did indeed contain more familiar equipment. "Though we cannot understand why you would prefer them." Before the chef could respond, a new alien entered the kitchen. This one was shorter, rounder, and seemed to be composed primarily of irritation and brightly colored official-looking garments. "So this is the primitive being who thinks it can cook for his magnificence," the newcomer said, making no attempt to hide its disdain. "I am Zilgorax, Grand Chef of the Imperial Household, supervisor of 300 culinary drones, and holder of 17 Galactic Culinary Excellence Awards." "Nice to meet you too," the chef replied with a smile that contained more teeth than warmth. "I'm the human who's apparently going to save your job by fixing whatever atrocities you've been serving." Zilgorax's skin flushed a deep purple. "My creations are nutritionally perfect. They are scientifically balanced. They are..." "Boring as watching paint dry?" the chef suggested. "Yeah, That's kind of why I'm here. The Grand Chef made a sound like a balloon losing air through a reed instrument. You will find, human, that cooking for the Emperor is not like preparing sustenance for your undeveloped species. His Magnificence's digestive system requires precise calibration of nutrients, careful balancing of molecular structures, and flavor, the chef interrupted. It requires flavor, which is apparently what I'm here to provide. We shall see, Zilgorax huffed. You have 4 hours to prepare your first meal for the Emperor. I suggest you use them wisely. With that, the Grand Chef turned and oozed out of the kitchen, leaving behind a faint scent of wounded pride and bureaucratic aftershave. One of the escort aliens made a sound that might have been a chuckle. You have made an enemy. Story of my life, the chef sighed, rolling up sleeves and surveying the kitchen. Now, what exactly can the Emperor eat without, dying horribly? And please tell me you have something resembling salt in this place. The next 4 hours were a crash course in xenobiology, imperial dietary restrictions, and the surprising discovery that the galactic equivalent of butter existed on 17 planets and was universally appreciated. By the time the first imperial dinner was due to be served, the chef had prepared what could only be described as a culinary Hail Mary, a meal based on Earth techniques but using entirely alien ingredients, combined in ways that honored both the Emperor's physiological needs and the fundamental human belief that food should bring joy. As the serving drones carried the dishes toward the imperial dining hall, the chef felt a now familiar sensation, the combination of terror and exhilaration that came with sending food to someone who could make or break your future. Except this time, the stakes weren't just a bad review. This time, it was cook well or be fired, possibly out of a cannon. Into a sun. 2 weeks after the human chef's arrival, the imperial palace was experiencing something unprecedented, the sound of an emperor chewing with enthusiasm. Emperor Xorlax had not only stopped threatening planetary destruction during mealtimes, but had actually been overheard using the phrase, "looking forward to dinner," words so shocking that 3 long-serving courtiers had required medical attention. Your methods are chaotic, unpredictable, and completely devoid of scientific precision, Grand Chef Zilgorax complained, watching the human toss ingredients into a pot with casual disregard for exact measurements. Yet somehow the Emperor consumes your creations without executing anyone. It defies explanation. The chef grinned, stirring a sauce that shifted through 7 colors not visible to human eyes. That's because cooking isn't just chemistry, it's art. You've been so focused on nutritional efficiency that you forgot food should bring joy. Joy is not a recognized component of digestive processes, Zilgorax sniffed, though with noticeably less conviction than 2 weeks prior. The kitchen had transformed from a sterile laboratory into something approaching organized chaos. Cooking drones, programmed for thousands of years to follow precise formulas, were learning to improvise. A concept so foreign that 2 units had suffered logic failures and now believed they were writing avant-garde culinary poetry. The chef moved between stations, tasting, adjusting, encouraging. More acid in this one. This needs texture. Try those crunchy blue things. No, don't puree everything into submission. The Emperor has teeth for a reason. News of the palace's culinary revolution spread faster than a quantum entanglement wave. Kitchen staff from other departments found excuses to observe. Junior diplomats invented reasons to be near the kitchens during prep time. Even the Emperor's guards had developed a sudden, intense interest in security protocols that required them to taste test suspicious dishes. "The Emperor has requested your presence," announced the Minister of Interspecies Cultural Affairs, gliding into the kitchen with typical ethereal grace. The Arcturan delegation returns tomorrow to resume negotiations on the plutonium rights agreement. His Magnificence believes your techniques might facilitate discussions. The chef looked up from a bubbling pot. So, my food's being used for galactic diplomacy? Cool. I would not characterize potential economic collapse as cool, the minister replied, blinking her 7 eyes in sequence. The Arcturans are notoriously sensitive regarding consumption rituals. Their last visit resulted in a 17-page formal complaint about their digestive distress. No pressure, then, the chef muttered. Indeed, significant pressure. Arcturan satisfaction correlates directly with the Empire's access to 97% of known plutonium reserves. After the minister departed, Zilgorax oozed closer. Perhaps, the Grand Chef suggested, with forced politeness, this particular meal should adhere more closely to established protocols. The Arcturans have specific digestive requirements and cultural taboos. The chef wasn't listening, already deep in thought. Tell me everything about Arcturan eating habits, what they consider delicious versus disgusting, cultural significances, taboos, everything. What followed was an intensive xenogastronomic education, delivered by an increasingly animated Zilgorax, who, despite professional jealousy, couldn't help warming slightly to anyone showing such intense interest in his expertise. And they consider counterclockwise stirring highly offensive, Zilgorax concluded. Something about the cultural significance of temporal direction. The chef nodded, mind racing with possibilities. I think I've got it. We'll adapt the molecular gastronomy techniques I've been teaching the drones, but with specific modifications for Arcturan sensibilities. Zilgorax made a skeptical sound. The last chef who attempted innovation with Arcturan cuisine ended their career as a decorative ice sculpture. Then I'd better get it right, the chef replied, with the particular blend of confidence and terror that defined professional cooking across the galaxy. The kitchen hummed with unprecedented activity as preparations began. Earth techniques melded with alien ingredients. The chef worked alongside kitchen drones, teaching them that perfect food required imperfection, the subtle variations that indicated something was crafted rather than manufactured. 4 hours before the diplomatic dinner, disaster struck. The chef entered cold storage to retrieve specially prepared components, only to find everything reduced to an unidentifiable grey sludge. Sabotage, hissed Zilgorax, who had accompanied the chef. But who would dare? The chef, staring at the ruined ingredients, felt a familiar adrenaline-fueled clarity that came when everything went wrong minutes before service. Doesn't matter who, only matters what we do about it. The chef turned to Zilgorax. I need your help. We have 4 hours to create an entirely new menu that won't trigger an interstellar incident. Zilgorax's appendages fluttered in surprise. You want my assistance? You understand their biology better than I ever could. I know how to make food interesting. Together, we might pull this off. For a moment, Zilgorax was silent. Then, with a sound like hydraulic systems engaging, the Grand Chef seemed to grow taller. Very well, human. Let us show whoever did this what happens when culinary science and your bizarre art of cooking combine. What followed was 4 hours of the most intense cooking the Imperial Palace had ever witnessed. Human intuition melded with alien precision. Earth techniques adapted through extraterrestrial understanding. The kitchen staff watched in awe as the human chef and Grand Chef Zilgorax moved in a coordinated dance of culinary creation. By the time the Arcturan delegation arrived, an entirely new menu awaited, one that honored their traditions while introducing elements no one in the Galactic Empire had contemplated. Through the kitchen's monitoring system, the chef and Zilgorax watched nervously as the first courses were served. Emperor Xorlax looked uncharacteristically anxious, his 16 eyes darting between the Arcturian ambassador and the plates being presented. "If this goes poorly," Zilgorax murmured, "I suggest we steal a shuttle and flee to the outer void." The chef nodded, too tense to speak, as the Arcturians sampled the first dish. For one eternal moment, the diplomatic hall went silent. Then the Arcturian ambassador, a being known throughout 17 quadrants for its emotional restraint, did something unprecedented in the recorded history of interspecies relations. Enki giggled. The sound, somewhere between wind chimes and a bubbling brook, echoed through the hall. Soon the entire delegation was making sounds of pleasure that the Empire's translation matrix struggled to interpret. "Hey, enjoying it?" Zilgorax whispered, appendages trembling in disbelief. "Food has that effect," the chef replied with a tired smile, "even on beings with 17 digestive chambers." As the meal progressed, the diplomatic negotiations, stalled for decades, began to flow as smoothly as the conversation. By dessert, the plutonium rights agreement had not only been revisited, but expanded to include trade agreements previously considered impossible. "I believe," Zilgorax said finally, "that I may have been incorrect about certain aspects of food preparation. And I couldn't have pulled this off without your knowledge," the chef admitted. A kitchen drone zoomed into the room. "The Emperor commands your immediate presence in the diplomatic hall," it announced. "Both of you." The chef and Zilgorax exchanged glances. "Is he angry?" the chef asked. The drone's lights pulsed in confusion. "Emotional analysis indicates the Emperor is experiencing an unprecedented state. The closest identifier in our database is satisfaction." As they made their way to the diplomatic hall, neither knew exactly what awaited them, but one thing had become clear. In a galactic empire built on power, politics, and scientific advancement, something as simple as a well-prepared meal had just changed everything. The diplomatic hall fell silent as the human chef and Zilgorax entered. Emperor Xorlax sat at the head of a table, surrounded by Arcturians whose usual grey complexions had flushed to a pleased lavender. "Approach!" the Emperor commanded, his voice lacking its usual undertone of imminent execution. The chef and Zilgorax exchanged nervous glances before stepping forward. "Your meal," the Emperor announced, "has accomplished what 17 diplomatic missions and 3 minor military actions could not." He gestured to the Arcturian ambassador, who bobbed in what appeared to be their version of a contented nod. "The flavor profiles transcended mere sustenance," the ambassador's translator device intoned. "They spoke to cultural understanding through gastronomic communication." The chef blinked. "You mean, you liked it?" "We have signed not only the plutonium rights agreement, but also established 7 new trade routes and a cultural exchange program," the Emperor said. "All because of food that wasn't," he struggled to find the right words, "aggressively bland." The Minister of Interspecies Cultural Affairs floated forward, all 7 eyes wide with disbelief. "This is unprecedented in 12,000 years of imperial history." "As is this meal," added the ambassador, appendages still trembling with pleasure. "We request that this cooking method be formally documented in the Galactic Culinary Codex." "A formal entry in the Codex?" Zilgorax gasped, nearly detaching several appendages in shock. "That would elevate these techniques to officially recognized imperial standards." The Emperor raised a ceremonial appendage for silence. "Before we proceed with such formalities, there remains the matter of who attempted to sabotage tonight's proceedings." The diplomatic hall grew tense. The chef noticed subtle shifts in the Imperial Guard's positions. "The culprit has been identified," the Emperor continued. Security records show Administrator Kulzak entering the cold storage immediately before the ingredients were destroyed. A tall, thin alien near the back of the hall turned a guilty shade of green. Kulzak was heavily invested in the previous catering contract, the minister explained quietly. The human's success threatened significant financial interests. The traditional punishment for such sabotage is molecular dispersal, the Emperor noted casually, as if discussing the weather. However, I find myself oddly disinclined toward execution this evening. The chef recognized an opportunity. Your Magnificence, on Earth we have a saying, living well is the best revenge. Explain, the Emperor demanded, intrigued. Instead of punishment, make Administrator Kulzak the official taste tester for every new dish we create. Let him experience what he tried to destroy. The Emperor's 16 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of imperial amusement. Elegant, psychological rather than physical retribution. Very well. Turning to the assembled court, the Emperor rose to his full, impressive height. Let it be known throughout the Empire that cooking shall no longer be merely about efficient nutrient delivery. A new department of culinary arts will be established, co-directed by our Grand Chef Zilgorax and the human chef. Zilgorax's appendages fluttered in surprised delight. Furthermore, the Emperor continued, we declare that the human's contract shall be extended indefinitely, with all promised compensation doubled. The chef's jaw dropped. Doubled? Unless that is insufficient? The Emperor inquired. No, I mean, that's extremely sufficient, Your Magnificence. Excellent. Then let us celebrate this new era of imperial cuisine with something I've been told humans particularly enjoy. The Emperor made a gesture, and servers appeared carrying what looked suspiciously like cake. Dessert. 1 year later, as the chef supervised the graduation of the first class from the Imperial Culinary Academy, a question arose from a student with 7 sensory stalks and a promising talent for soufflés. Where did the Emperor really hire a human chef? Was it truly just for better food? The chef smiled, watching Zilgorax demonstrate proper flame technique to junior apprentices across the kitchen. Food isn't just nutrition, it's diplomacy. It's how we show we understand each other. So the Emperor hired you to improve diplomatic relations? No, the chef laughed. He hired me because he was tired of eating garbage, but what the Empire got, was something they didn't know they were missing. Flavor, the student guessed. Humanity, the chef corrected, in all its messy, imprecise, creative glory. Across 17 quadrants, 42 species, and countless dinner tables, the Empire was finally developing good taste.